I am Sean Webb, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Rock Goddess, and I am rolling with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Dave Meltzer, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Zach Poitras, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, Superior Nation? Welcome back. I'm Trey Downs, and this is Your Superior Self. Welcome back. This week has been, I should say last week was insane. It was incredible. And wherever you're listening from, I am in the United States, and we witnessed some horrific behavior in Washington, D.C. And needless to say, this is what I would call crazy times. But the good thing is that I have Philip Goldberg on the show today. And he is the author of the book titled Spiritual Practice for Crazy Times: Powerful Tools to Cultivate Calm, Clarity, and Courage. Talk about timing. Talk about coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. I think this was supposed to air this week. I think this is meant to be out there in the world this week because we need it. Go to Amazon, order this book, go to his website, pick it up, and read it, because this has some amazing techniques and guidance on meditation, on just ways that you can just become more in tune with your spiritual mindset, how to become more still, how to tune out all that negativity, how to drop into powerful, deep meditations. And I mean, we have a great conversation. This is one of my favorites so far, just because Phil's a really great guy. He has more than 45 years experience in studying the world's spiritual traditions. He goes quite a bit over to India. He studies all of the great literatures. We actually have a great conversation about the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, in this interview, which I didn't know that he taught classes on, which was really exciting for me because I am a student of the Gita. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I definitely have read it, and I reread it when I can, so that way I can gather more of the inspiration from the teachings. And his meditation practices are on point. Like, I'm reading over it now, and I am not an expert meditator, not at all. Like, I am getting into the game. Like, and the biggest takeaway from our conversation is practice. In order to be any great at anything, you have to practice. I mean, I'm not even a great runner. I mean, I know how to run. I think we all know how to run, right? But in order to run further, you have to practice. You just can't go out there and run a marathon. You have to go out and walk a little bit, get that first mile, and then you practice that mile, and you go on to the next. And same thing with meditation. Same thing with anything. You're never a pro the first time you do something. I mean, I'm still not even, I'm halfway decent at podcasting, but it's practice. It's putting in the repetitions, the reps. You have to do the reps. And same thing with meditation. I know I keep saying that, but it's true. Because a lot of us, when we meditate, we don't really know what we're doing or what we're trying to accomplish. I know we have this idea, everyone talks about it. We should get up in the morning and meditate because it's something that we hear people say we should do, and we try it and we don't really know what we're doing. But Phil has some great guidelines in here, some great strategies. But for myself, I find that I'm opening that door of my inner being, that island that is inside of me, that is calm and very powerful. I find myself very eager to meditate in the morning. Very excited to meditate in the morning because I experience new things with it. I experience new levels of awareness, and I learn. It's crazy. I learn teachings from these meditations. It's really been an eye opener for me, a game changer. I mean, for real. I'm not messing with you. Like, I know people say meditate. You need to do it, and at a certain point, it seems like everyone's meditating. It's the thing to do, but it really is the thing to do. Like, I'm telling you, from a novice to another novice or an expert or whoever you are, when you're listening to this, you need to meditate. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's all, in my opinion, it's all subjective. It is that experience with the oneness, with God, with yourself. It is all subjective. Don't put too much into that. Your experience is whatever it needs to be. And whatever you experience, it's a good thing. I think when you start using your logical brain too much in this, then that's where you hit that wall. You kind of got to tear that away, and whatever you experience is right for you in the moment. You're right where you need to be, and keep getting up and keep doing it. Just keep sitting. But buy this book because he has a lot of great tips in it. I mean, it's a pretty powerful conversation. Let me just show you. Let me put a little preview in here for you.
You must be true to yourself. You are an individual. It's your path. And I was given permission by the Gita and the teachers I met to to follow my own path. And they offered guidance, just as the books offer guidance, but they were not commandments. They were, this is what's good. This would be good for you, but you have to see for yourself.
Absolutely, Phil. You hit the nail on the head with that one, buddy. You have to find out for yourself, and just a piece of advice, don't be too objective in your pursuit. Be very subjective. Knock down that left analytical brain when you're experiencing these paths for yourself. Don't analyze too much. Be very subjective in your pursuit of happiness. I do that too much. I build that wall of analytical mindset a little bit too high, and I can't get over it when I'm experiencing very personal meditation or a situation where I might think that that it didn't happen, or I'm trying to compare notes with someone else that is meditating, and you can't really do that in the world of spirituality. Science can't explain a lot of what's going on in spirituality, even though they try. I mean, trust me, I try to take a very scientific approach to most things in my life. Collecting the data, comparing notes, cause and effect, F-stat, all that good stuff. Correlations, variance. I mean, it helps us decipher what is true and what is not. But that's very materialistic of us, right? And I'm breaking that down a little bit more. I know in a lot of episodes, especially in the Tom Campbell one, where they are straight collecting data, and they're straight comparing notes, and they're straight trying to analyze what is happening. But a lot of this stuff, you can't really do that, especially in meditation, because it is coming from your inner source and your inner being. And a lot of that data you cannot compare because it is unique to yourself. And the message that you need to know is only going to be known by you. So don't beat yourself up too much when you're having an experience or a message is translated to you in a way that only you understand it. And you're kind of thinking to yourself, oh, is that what that meant? Just accept the message. Just accept the message for what it is and apply it to your life if you can. And then you go back and you practice some more, and more things happen, and just enjoy it. Just enjoy that lovingness that you feel, or that just enjoy the journey, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I'm excited about this conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope that you guys get a lot out of it. Make sure you guys buy his book, Spiritual Practice for Crazy Times, because God knows we are in crazy times right now. This is one of those tools that you can use to help you with techniques to access more of a sanctuary / peace fortress for yourself, to help build inner strength within you. And that's off the back of the cover. Yes, I agree 100% with that. You guys are great. I can't wait for you guys to listen to this. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Philip Goldberg.
Hi, this is Philip Goldberg, and I'm here with Trey Downs on Your Superior Self.
Philip, I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I read your book, and it's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Just for those who don't know the book, is Spiritual Practice for Crazy Times. I don't know if a world needed a book more now than ever, and this is it. This is definitely crazy times, and the spiritual practice techniques and tools in this book is phenomenal.
Well, thank you. I keep getting complimented for my impeccable timing, but in fact, I wrote the book last year when I thought things were crazy, and no one anticipated that publishing it in August would be even crazier. So
why don't you give everyone, yeah, man, you got the best timing. Why don't you give everyone like a quick background on you? Because I'm sure they're wondering, a guy's writing a book about spiritual practice, he must have some experience.
Well, yes, I do. I've been studying the world's spiritual traditions, mostly the traditions that came to us from the East, from India, for more than 50 years. And, starting as a young seeker in college, and then becoming a practitioner and a meditation teacher, trained in 1970. And then when I became a professional writer, broadening the scope of my inquiries and writing about spiritual subjects whenever I could. As a professional writer, I've also written about a lot of other subjects. And then in sometime around 2007 or 8, prior to that, I wrote a book called Road Signs on the Spiritual Path. And then I wrote a book that was published in 2010 called American Veda. It's actually up there. Which the subtitle will tell you what it's about. It's from Emerson and the Beatles to yoga and meditation, how Indian spirituality changed the West. It's a history of how these teachings came here. I followed that up with a biography of Paramahansa Yogananda, famous author of Autobiography of a Yogi, which came out 2 years ago. And I've been a spiritual counselor, as I said, meditation teacher. I was ordained as an Interfaith Minister. So between all my writings, articles, books, and my work, I've accumulated a lot of knowledge and understanding about life in the modern world, being on a spiritual path. And sometime early last year, I kept encountering people who were having difficulty adapting to, the craziness that we were in even before the pandemic. People who were angry and worried and fearful and, all kinds of overwhelming emotions, trying to be well informed and also protect themselves from the barrage of news. And so I kept running into people who were neglecting spiritual practice or thought that would be a waste of time. And so I wrote an article about the essential necessity of spiritual practices at times like this. And that ended up becoming this book.
Mhm.
So that's the short answer to your question.
So what sparked all that for you? Like what started you down that spiritual path?
Well, I was a student in the 60s. I was raised in New York by atheists, good, wonderful people, but had no use for religion. I didn't either. And when I was in college, I was very active in the civil rights movement and the anti-Vietnam War movement. I wanted to change the world. And, but I also was like, millions of my contemporaries, struggling in my personal life, wondering what the hell this was all about. How do you be happy in the world? What are we doing here? How do we connect to the larger picture? To what's our place in the universe, if there is one? What is the purpose of it all? And in that mix of experimentation and searching, books would be circulated. This is, way before the internet, of course. And so certain books came my way about Eastern philosophy. First books about Zen, and then books about mysticism, and then books about yoga and Vedanta philosophies. And I just took to it like, it was the most obvious, rational, logical step to dive into this stuff. And I dove into it at the expense of my schoolwork, ended up dropping out of graduate school. And I just was drawn to it for some mysterious karmic reason I can't explain. It just resonated deeply in my anti-religious soul. And I just was opened up to a world of spirituality that was different from what I understood religion to be. So you could say I was like an early adopter of what now has come to be called spiritual but not religious. And, but with this orientation toward the practical teachings that came from the East, which never asked me to believe in anything on faith, but to test everything out in practice. And the methods that came with that package, principally meditation, worked. They were transformative. My life changed. And so I plunged in at each step more deeply, and it became the sort of centerpiece of my life, and in recent years, my professional life as well.
That is right where I'm at. Just a curiosity about why we're here, what's going on, like the higher purpose, what we truly are, and I'm starting to read more mystical books about reincarnation and the source and where we go after here and what is our purpose here. What have you learned, like your experience? Like, I know I have my belief, but what's yours about where we transcend to after this?
After life, you mean?
Yeah.
You plunged right into it, didn't you, Trey? You didn't waste.
You can't talk about mysticism and all this, and then
you didn't waste any time. I'm just as a parenthetical remark, judging from the look of you, you're probably the age that if I had a son, a son would be. And I find it very encouraging to know that people of your generation, times are different now, but I see that same kind of searching and seeking. And you guys have it's so different now. You have access to so much incredible resources that, I couldn't even find a copy of the Bhagavad Gita when I heard about it. Now you can go online and get, 15 different translations.
Which one you want?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I have 15 because I give workshops on the Gita, and I have all these translations. That's one. That's a good one. But when I first heard about it in the 60s, I had to go, scrounging through bookstores in New York City to finally find one. Anyway, I was not avoiding your challenging question. When I was raised in this atheistic family, and my mother died young, and I remember, in the last days and weeks of her life, she had not an inkling there was anything after that. It was just going to end. And that's how I felt about it. But when I was reading Indian philosophy and getting a framework for the nature of the inner life and what we truly are at our core as spiritual beings, I started to think, maybe, what we in the West call a soul, maybe there is something to that. And then I read about reincarnation, and I thought, that makes sense. That kind of holds up. And then I found certain people whom I really respected, Western intellectuals, authors, famous philosophers, who were also inclined in that direction, including, of all people, Norman Mailer, this, who I always thought of as this hard-boiled New York cynical novelist. I read something from him where he thought, well, reincarnation makes the most sense, so I'm betting on that, And I thought, that's how I felt. And I'm rational enough to know that I can't know for sure, and that, I'll find out, maybe not for the first time, when I leave this body. But I feel very strongly that I'm not just my body, that I have some essence, some essential aspect of my identity that's not my body and not this personality called Phil in this form, that there's more to this thing called I. Walt Whitman said, I am not confined, I'm not contained between my hat and my boots. and I have that sense from deep intuition, from personal experience. This body changes, this body will go, this body will stop working. Something of me will continue. And in that context, I'm betting on the rebirth. It just, as a system of, if I had to place a bet, that's where I bet, because I like to think that there's some cosmic justice in the universe, and that hope. Yeah. Yes, and I'm inclined to believe in the laws of karma, and the laws of karma simply don't hold up to me unless you also account for multiple incarnations, so you can go through the curriculum.
I love the Gita. I love it. I think it's a great teaching. I think you're not entitled to the treasure. You're entitled to the work. Be satisfied with the work, right?
And not be attached.
Yeah, not be attached. That's the hard part. Attachments. The attachments are really hard for me, because it's like
they're hard for everybody.
Truly. Yeah, man. I mean, it's
especially if you think it's easy, because it's not. And I run into a lot of people. They read about non-attachment. First of all, there's a lot of confusion about what it is and misconception. And people hear non-attachment and they try to create like some kind of attitude or mood. And it turns into indifference. And non-attachment doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean you don't care about what's going on. It doesn't mean you'd rather not succeed. It doesn't mean that. In the Gita, that teaching is given to Arjuna, who's a warrior. You don't go into battle if you're a soldier fighting against evil, not caring whether you are victorious. You enter caring, and you have the intent of accomplishing something. While you're doing it, you can't be thinking about the outcome, and you can't get so attached to the outcome you're not in the present, and so attached to the outcome that if it doesn't work out your way, you're devastated. But it doesn't mean you don't care. But even what I just described is not always easy to attain, because we worry and we project, and I've been at this a long time, and I run into people who say, oh, I'm too attached. Well, there's something I remember, I think it was Ram Dass who said you can be attached to non-attachment. So you have to guard against that too.
Well, what are some methods that you utilize, like when you feel like because it's not just being emotionless or however you want to say it. Like, you can't just say, all right, I'm not going to feel emotion, because we're human beings and we feel emotion, right? Like, there's times where I'm like, at first I was kind of like, don't feel emotion, don't feel anger, like whatever, just, it's bad to feel, but it's like, you have to honor that too. Like, that part of yourself, like, you have to honor the anger that you feel in the moment, or the sadness or the hurt or whatever, just like you honor the happiness and the joy. Like, just because it's happy or good doesn't mean that's all you feel. Like, you gotta love the good and you gotta love the bad. But you
have to be real.
Yeah.
We're human. I know it's a lot of thing in the spiritual path, especially in the early stages of it. You think you're supposed to be happy all the time and peaceful all the time and joy and bliss. And then stuff happens and you get pissed off and you get worried and you say, oh, I'm not spiritual enough and I'm failing. No, you're still human. I've been around a lot of great spiritual teachers. I take tours to India. I sat with swamis and gurus. I've seen them get annoyed. I've seen them get angry at people when they're let down. The thing is, they're not really much affected inside, but they're still human and they're still interacting with the world, and they can honor that, and then it's gone. It's when it sticks to us and we can't shake it. But these momentary moods, these reactions to circumstance, we can't be too judgmental about ourselves. But there are techniques we can do. And to me, the fundamental principle in this is, and this is the sort of core foundation of the book, Spiritual Practice for Crazy Times, is to have practices that put you in touch with the inner silence, the inner peace that is your essence, that is your birthright, that is who you and what you are at the core of your being. The way I put it in the book is that we have within us a sanctuary of peace. The most perfect sanctuary.
How do you get there though? Like I always hear that myself. Like every book that I read is like, you have to go in. Like we're always looking for that external whatever it is that's going to make us feel good, and it's not there. You have to turn it and go back in. Like I was reading Saint Teresa, the Inner Castle book.
Yeah.
And, like how do you do that though? Is it through meditation? Like, and when do you know that you're there? Like, I just feel like I sit down and meditate and it's like, I don't know if I'm doing it right. Like I think a lot of people feel that.
Have you ever been instructed in how to meditate?
Not really, not outside of YouTube.
Now I'm telling you, man, for 45, 50 years, I've been hearing this. It's always so interesting to me that people read about, inner peace and meditation, quieting the mind and giving you deep relaxation. And they try to do it. They think, oh, I'll do that. I'll go sit down and meditate. Or they read, an article in the magazines that gives you some superficial instruction and they try to do it. The same people wouldn't dream of learning to drive, of just getting behind the wheel of a truck and driving it without instructions. Or, I think I'll play the saxophone, and buying one and just, blowing the horn. We need instruction, and meditation is no different. So I'm a very big fan of getting proper instruction. Just like if you wanted to do yoga and you learned about yoga, you don't just start stretching and bending on your own. You get instruction. And there are forms of meditation that, anybody can do. You can listen to a tape. But the deeper forms of meditation require some instruction. And I have, there's a whole chapter in my book, as you know, if you saw it, about meditation, about the different forms of meditation, and why I favor the kind of meditation practices that don't require a lot of mind control and effort to concentrate. They're rather more of a letting go and letting nature take you inward to the quiet place within you, because it's there. And we go there naturally if we know how to create the proper conditions to allow it to happen. And that's what good meditation instruction will provide. And once you learn a good practice, then you can do it on your own. You sit and meditate. It doesn't mean your mind is quiet from the minute you close your eyes. No, that would be ridiculous to expect that. The mind is always active. But the mind can be active, thinking and doing stuff. And at the same time, there's a settling quality and a quieting quality. So it's, at the end of the period of meditation, you've experienced more quietness inside than you normally would if you were just doing nothing. And so over time, you cultivate the quality. I was going to say the skill, but it's not a skill. It's an inclination. It's a natural process. It's like doing exercise every day. Eventually, your muscles are going to get stronger. You meditate every day, and the mind, gets conditioned to settling with just the intention of doing it. And once that habit is built in, you can then access the inner peace more easily, more readily when you need it. And so I have in the book, not just I advocate having a regular daily practice of some, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you can do, but also then having a whole inventory of practices that you can call upon at any time, especially when, things are crazy.
Yeah.
And then reconnect to the peace.
Reconnect. Man, that is the key words there, reconnect. Because like I said, we're always looking for that external stuff. Like we're always looking outward for the answers. And, I'm finding more and more that they're inward. And, I'm just on my journey. Like I'm just on this, I keep hearing, I'm a big fan of Paul Selig and his work. And I don't know if you know Paul or not. He talks a lot about about the Christ self in us,
Mm-hmm.
the Christ that is inside of us, that life source, and we are of that source, a higher consciousness. Now, when you meditate, and if you get into like a deep meditation, can you, like, because if you have all this experience, have you ever felt like you were one with consciousness, like one with the universe, like you felt either you were one with all, or whatever that phrase is?
Yes.
Yes. And
Yes.
what do you feel when you're,
Periodically, that comes in meditation, much more now than in the early days of my spiritual life, because of that, inner habit that gets cultivated. It's not something you try to do. It's not something you can force. In Western spiritual traditions, you might call it grace. It just happens. You can't say, today I'm going to feel at one with the universe, or now I'm going to push that oneness button. But what you can do is create the conditions to improve your odds. So, the great Indian sage Ramakrishna once said that grace is like the wind. It's always there. It's always available, but you have to set your sails to catch it. So
what do you feel
that's
when you're
what
there?
meditation practices are about. You create the proper conditions. A Zen master once said, enlightenment is an accident, but meditation makes you accident prone. So and people might have that sense of oneness, not just, during meditation. There's people who have had this kind of experience just, walking in the woods, or making love, or listening to music. It's so natural. It can just come upon us at any moment. And then, we try to force it and make it happen again. People go to drug use to make it happen again. It's not a good idea to get desperate about that and to want it so badly that, you do self-defeating things, or try to force it or fake it. But you can pursue it. You can set your intention for, I want that oneness. I want that. And I'm going to do my practices. I'm going to make sure my body is in good health. Like, Buddha always said, the body is the vehicle for awakening. And I'm going to cultivate spiritual practices. I'm going to learn whatever I can. And you just, improve the conditions that make grace possible. But yes, I have had that. And there's times when it comes over me, like in meditation or something, and I say, oh, yes. Yes.
Oh, that's all you say is, oh, yes? I bet you're like...
Well, no, it's not like, hallelujah. It's not. I don't have that kind of experience. Some people do, great charges of ecstasy or something. But, it's just the ultimate peace. And it's just, yes, it's all oneness, and I'm that. And then, thoughts come and feelings come, and, it's time to get up and do the dishes, and only you have a little bit more peace this time when you do.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Like, yeah, I mean, it's like getting, even doing the dishes is a meditation, right? Getting that rhythm. I go running. Yeah. I run and I get into that, right? Like I change, I'm sure everyone knows on this podcast by now is, because that's all I talk about is running and getting into those mind altering consciousness states, going from beta to alpha. And
so you got those endorphins going.
Endorphins, man. Like I'm addicted to that. When you talk about drugs, like the bodily.
No, I get that. I had when I was young, I was a jock. Then, I abandoned that. But I remember, long before I was on a spiritual path, that incredible feeling of mind and body coordinating together and not thinking. I quote Yogi Berra in my book, who said, you can't think and hit at the same time.
You can't at all.
And
what did you play? Did you play baseball?
I played baseball, football, and basketball in my youth.
Really? What positions?
I was a little league pitcher and then a high school, believe it or not, tight end weighing 165 pounds. And basketball was just wherever, schoolyard, pickup games, depending on who was tall and who wasn't. But I was probably inclined to be a Steve Nash type of.
Look at you, Steve Nash. There you go.
That would have been my game had I gone into more organized.
Sure. Yeah. No, I played football and baseball, and it's the endorphins and the dopamine, right? Like going after those goals and the batting average. And I look at it totally different. The ego. It's so funny though. I look at people now and I can see the ego working in their decisions. It's kind of like, I'm not perfect, but I know what's driving their decisions. And I can see a lot of the businesses and some of the companies that I read about or know, and like, they just don't want to admit they're wrong in certain situations. They cannot let anyone know that they're wrong, and they will fight you tooth and nail to fight the fact that they're wrong, just because it's the ego. The ego says, I can't be wrong. And it's like, I never was aware to that before, because I thought that I was the ego. I thought that was me.
Yes. And now you know that the ego is just part of the picture, and you're bigger than that. You're not that. You're not just that. And, we're reminded, I hate to get political, but we're reminded of runaway ego every day in the news. And it's something we have to contend with and learn from. Because we mentioned sports, I want to say, and you probably understand this because you were an athlete and you played team sports. When you're in the game, even as a spectator, I've been watching the NBA playoffs, and there have been some very close games. And there are those guys who, when the pressure is really on, you want them to have the ball. Mm-hmm. And they want the ball because they're not only good, they're not only talented, they're the ones who keep their cool. They don't panic. They keep that inner calm, that inner stability when the pressure's on. Those are the guys we all want to be like, right?
Yeah.
We want to be like Mike. We want to be Michael Jordan at the end of the game. We want to be that guy. And when you're a sports fan or a player, you aspire to that. But it's really no different from being an entrepreneur or a business leader who's under pressure, or an overworked single mom who's keeping a job and being with the kids, or a doctor in an emergency situation, or just any situation in life when we're up against difficulties and challenges and pressures. We want to be able to retain the inner stability and clarity of mind so we don't get flummoxed and make bad decisions and screw up and throw the ball away or drop the pass or whatever it is. We want to be the sure-handed one that rises to the occasion. And that's what a big part of my book is really aiming at, to give people that inner calm in the midst of crazy times. It's an analogy, the sports thing, but it's a good one.
Sure. And a lot of those championships are won in practice, right? Like those championships, you got to get the mechanics down. It's got to be second nature. And, meditation is one that you're going to have, you're not going to, like you said, you're not going to get it all at the first time. It's going to have to be repetition, just like practice. And
Very good. Thank you. That's a good addition to my sports metaphor. And, it's like the old joke, New York, it's a New Yorker's joke, so I don't know if your listeners will all know it, but the tourist is in New York and he stops somebody and says, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And the answer is practice, practice, practice. And it's like that in the spiritual life too. How do I get to this oneness? How do I get to inner peace? Practice, practice, practice. And you're right, it holds up in sports. It holds up in music. I was listening to an interview with one of the great jazz musicians, and he said the same thing, that when he's improvising, he's not thinking. If he started to think, the whole thing would fall apart. It's all just, magic. It's all automatic. But it's the result of years and years of practice.
Oh, yeah, you're so right on that too. Just because if you have to think, you're done. Like, you're in a championship game. If you're trying to reach that oneness, if you're trying to have an out-of-body experience, because some of the books that I've been reading now is like, Robert Monroe. And if you're trying to do any of that stuff, it's not going to happen. Like, your mind, you're too much in your head. And that's a sports analogy. Like, that is 100%. Like golfers, if you're too much in your head, you're not going to be able to make that shot. It's got to be.
You get the yips.
Yeah, it's got to be no self. There's got to be no ego. It's got to be all like this essence, and it's got to be from a place that you've been before. And that's what I love about this book too, because it breaks down, like you were talking about, being still and practices, for meditation, and it breaks it down step by step, bullet points on how to learn how to meditate. And this one chapter is spiritual time management. Talk about that. I mean, here it is. I mean, the answer: practice, practice, practice. It's right in the first.
I was just quoting myself. But,
it's so funny. How can I stay grounded in the crazy world? Practice, practice, practice. That's fun.
And the time management piece fits in because, I've always run into people and they say, I used to meditate and I used to go to yoga classes, or I used to go to church, whatever it is that is their, a spiritual outlet or practice that they are drawn to. And then they stop because they get busy. And they, maybe when the kids are grown, or, when the pandemic's over, or, once I get through this semester or whatever it is, then I'll meditate, then I'll go back to these things. And that's where spiritual time management comes in, because if you really appreciate the practical benefits that accrue from regular spiritual practice, you don't see it as a luxury or a kind of peripheral add-on to your life, like, going to the theater or something. It becomes more of an investment in your well-being, like you invest the time to exercise, and you invest the time to take a shower and to brush your teeth and to make sure you eat properly. There are things we do that enhance our well-being, and we just do them routinely because we know from experience that they have value. And that's how I see my daily spiritual experience. It's just a necessity of life for ongoing maintenance. And the reason I know it is because it has proven to be the case in my life. When I first took up these practices, there was a little bit of a an article of faith. Well, let me, it makes sense. Let me see if it works. And I was encouraged to treat it like an experiment. Do it, but do it properly and do it for a while. Do it long enough to see if it works. And I did. And it turned out that, yes, these are valuable. These are experiential validation of the promise of these things. And then some things would happen and I wouldn't do it for a day or two or three. And I noticed the difference. I'd notice, it's like, going without sleep for too long, or, skipping too many meals, and you feel it. You better eat. You better get some rest. You better shower because you feel grungy. And so that's how I felt when I didn't do it. So it was an experiment. And that's what I encourage people to do. Try the practice that seems right for you. Learn how to do these things properly. Or if something worked for you in the past, resume it. Make a commitment to do it for a while and see if it works. See if it has benefit in your life. And then do the same with, other practices and see if it makes a difference. And if you have good spiritual practices, you will then realize they're a good investment of time. They're not taking away from the responsibilities and the duties of your life. They're creating a platform, an inner sort of fortress, so that you can do what you do better. You come to it with more clarity, with more stability, with more compassion, with a greater capacity to love, with more discernment, with stronger sense of intuition. So the qualities that grow in you as a result of spiritual practice are really the sort of criteria for whether you're onto something or not. It's not just that, you feel more calm when you do it. It's not that you feel uplifted when you take time to read a sacred text. It's not just that you're inspired by watching a video of a great spiritual teacher. It's not just that you're feeling great because you took a break and you did some yoga asanas or you listened to some great music. It's that these things, whatever the spiritual practice may be, or whatever you consider spiritual, they feed you, they nourish you, they nourish the spirit. It's not just a temporary thing. The effect lingers, it clings to you, and then it fades away.